Hello, I'm Haley Parole, and this is Northwest Newsweek. Alvin Fiddler comfortably held on to his role of Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief after Wednesday's election. Fiddler had over twice as many votes as the runner-up. With only 3 candidates for NAN's Deputy Grand Chief positions, all 3 were acclaimed.
Our Grand Chief, as elected, is Alvin Fiddler.
The election was held during the 2nd annual Kiwewin Conference in Constance Lake First Nation. Alvin Fiddler was once again declared Grand Chief following a vote of chiefs in attendance. Of the 40 registered voters, Fiddler received 25 votes, with Pauline Penena Mickelson of Sachigo Lake First Nation coming in second with 10. And Fiddler says he's thankful to once again be named Grand Chief. He's looking forward to continuing to work with NAN communities.
To work as a team. And I've always said that the only way that we can function effectively is if we do it together. If we live up to those ideals that were set by our elders many years ago when they created this organization, the Attawapiskat Nation. On the flag, you will see 3 words: unity, strength, and success. And that's the only way that we can move forward. So, Miigwech, thank you so much for this opportunity.
3 Deputy Grand Chiefs were acclaimed: Anna Betty Achni-Peneskam from Martin Falls First Nation, Mike Matatawabin from Fort Albany First Nation, and Bobby A. Narcisse from Arrowland First Nation. 6 Northern Ontario First Nations have filed a case in Ontario Superior Court challenging the province's application of its Mining Act. The Coalition of First Nations says mining claims are being recorded on their lands without consent or any prior consultation. Joel Mendelson has the story.
These lands are our home that hold the sustenance for our future.
A challenge of Ontario's Mining Act. On Monday, 6 Northern Ontario First Nations filed a lawsuit against the province, calling the application of the Mining Act unconstitutional. According to the First Nations, mining claims are recorded without any prior consultations with the communities, even though the Mining Act states they should be consulted. They are then notified after the claims have been processed.
The registration of a mining claim gives its holder automatic property rights to the land. These property rights are allowed to overtake First Nation rights. We cannot turn any lands that have mining claims on them into reserves or Indigenous parks. We cannot act as stewards over these lands as our own laws require us to.
The First Nations filed the case in Ontario Superior Court. They say a huge portion of the land in Northern Ontario, which belongs to them, is now covered with thousands of mining claims.
This legal action is about more than just opposing specific mining claims. It's about challenging a system that regards our rights, violates our sovereignty, and fails to respect our relationship with the land.
They need to stop, the system of where they are staking claims online. Every non-member, every Treaty 9 member, these are the rights holders, and you cannot just work with First Nations, but it's got to be a process of land rights holders, treaty rights holders, and that need to be spoken to, and it's not happening.
Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford, who also serves as Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, was unable to provide a comment at this time. This application is expected to take about 1 year to reach a verdict. Joel Mendelson, TBT News.
An investigation is underway after the collapse of a railway bridge in Fort Frances this week. CN crews are looking into the incident, and repairs have already begun. Nev Van Pelt has this report.
Photos posted online show the Rainy River lift bridge collapsed on top of the railway tracks Wednesday on the Canadian side of Sand Bay. The cause for the collapse is still under investigation, with boaters unable to pass. Fort Frances Fire Chief Dave Robertson provided an update on the situation.
We're obviously watching it closely, especially in terms of how it affects quality of life and the citizenry of the town of Fort Frances. That's what we're charged with. This is our job. So we're obviously still very concerned about that. But I think we're kind of sitting back and trying to see what the CN engineering group's gonna say and want to do, and what requests they may have of Transport Canada as it affects the waterway moving forward.
Fortunately, there were no injuries, and a hazmat situation was ruled out. Chief Robertson and 3 firefighters responded to the incident to provide emergency lighting to the bridge and warn boaters. The bridge will be out of operation for a long time now, but Chief Robertson says this shouldn't have a big impact.
I do understand that its impact will be somewhat minimal, for recreational boaters. In terms of rail crossing and commercial rail crossing, I understand that this is actually a secondary crossing, and it's a distant second to I think it's the Rainy River Causeway, the one that crosses the international border.
CN has not made themselves available for an interview, but Chief Robertson confirmed that repairs have begun. Nev Van Pelt, TBT News.
The township of Ignace has received its first payment after declaring itself willing to host the nation's nuclear waste. Though a site decision has yet to be made, Ignace has received $1.5 million from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. The payment was negotiated as part of Ignace's willing agreement with the NWMO, contingent on wrapping up the willingness process before June 30th. The payment doesn't mean Ignace will be the chosen site, with the NWMO still considering South Bruce in southern Ontario. Outreach lead for the township of Ignace, Jake Pastore, talks about the next steps.
There's one other community in northwestern Ontario, namely the Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation, who still has to undertake their own willingness and is currently doing that separately with the NWMO. So we are one piece of that puzzle. And of course, there are two communities in southern Ontario, in the South Bruce and the Saugeen First Nation, who are undertaking the exact same process.
The NWMO is expected to name a host for the nuclear waste repository next year. Ganoogaming First Nation has now been under a state of emergency for nearly 3 months due to serious safety concerns in the community, including violence and addictions. Leadership says neither the provincial nor federal government has done enough to support them. Justin Hardy has been following the story and has the details.
The federal government hasn't reached out once.
Ganoogaming Chief Sherry Taylor says higher levels of government haven't stepped up to help the community, which has been under a state of emergency since May 15th. That was called in response to an increase in violence and drug and alcohol-related crime, as well as failing road infrastructure, particularly the bridge into the community. Patty Haidu, Minister of Indigenous Services, was unavailable for interview, but her press secretary provided a written statement that said the federal government stands ready to support Ganoogaming now and into the future, and has contributed $600,000 for peacekeeping during this crisis, as well as a $500 million investment to Nan Chu's life. The statement goes on to say that a July 18th meeting to discuss this was cancelled upon the community's request. Taylor says the community was able to secure a meeting with the province, but she had concerns as the person sent by Ontario was an acting assistant deputy minister.
So you see, there's people at this table that were not decision makers at all. They were more or less technical people. And we met with them, and I provided a plan. I provided things that we needed to get done right away for the safety of our community, a safety of our children that cross that bridge, that use that bridge on a daily basis. I gave them a plan. I haven't heard nothing back.
MPP Greg Rickford, the Ontario Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, says the officials in attendance for the meeting were decision makers and that he would follow up with the chief personally.
We were there for the community and the trials and tribulations that they may be going through. We see the opportunity in the Greenstone region, and we want to make sure that their young people have every opportunity to take advantage of that. That's the message I sent to Chief Taylor when we were there, but I'll be meeting with Chief Taylor. I'm a decision maker. She's a decision maker. We'll make decisions.
The federal government says it will continue to work with the province to address policing and road access to the community. There isn't a public date set yet for the follow-up with either levels of government. In the meantime, the community remains in crisis. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
First Nation leaders are divided in their reactions to the verdict in a coroner's inquest. A jury did not assign blame in the 2017 death of a woman in Kingfisher Lake First Nation. We'll have more on that after the break. A coroner's inquest has not assigned blame in the 2017 death of Ruanquish. That's what was found on Friday after 22 witnesses spoke at the inquest over 3 weeks. However, the jury did bring forward nearly 40 recommendations. Joel Mendelson has this report.
Ruanquish passed away due to complications associated with her diabetes after attending a nursing station in Kingfisher Lake First Nation in 2017. The jury in her death inquest has recommended numerous steps to prevent further suffering in remote First Nations. Firstly, it advocates for the transition to a single electronic medical record for patients so that medical professionals can form a better understanding of patients' needs. Furthermore, it recommends having physicians at Kingfisher Lake First Nation at all times, as well as increased training for nurses to better inform them of the tendencies of the communities which they treat. One of the many other ideas is to create a scholarship program to encourage students in the First Nation to pursue careers in medicine. Kwetnoon MPP Saul Mamakwa says the First Nations need to be in control of their own health care.
Bringing back services closer to home, but also, again, bringing back the power and the authority back to the First Nations. Let them decide. Give us those provincial resources. Give us those, federal resources, and let us run it on our own, because we can make it better than the rest of Ontario. We can make it better than the rest of Canada.
Mamakwa expressed his satisfaction with the recommendations and the changes they may bring. Alternatively, Nan Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler is not satisfied with the verdict of an undetermined cause of death.
When you look at the circumstances, not just on her death, but the other tragic deaths that have happened in our communities, it's because of racism in the healthcare system. That there is neglect. Like, how many times did Ruth Ann go to the nursing station with the same condition, with the same symptoms, or the same symptoms, and was sent home?
Queequish's brother Jordan spoke to end the inquest. He expressed his hope that with better healthcare systems in place, nobody should have to go through what they did. Joel Mendelson, TBT News.
2 structure fires occurred last Sunday morning in Attawapiskat Lake First Nation. Investigators are treating both as potential arson. One fire destroyed the community's Anglican church, and council members say that it's left the community heartbroken. Jessica Clement has the story.
Community members in Attawapiskat First Nation are still in shock after a fire destroyed the community's only Anglican church. The blaze happened at around 7 Sunday morning, and it is now being investigated as a potential arson. Despite efforts from community firefighters, the church was deemed a total loss. Head counselor Rachel Mamakwa says the whole situation is heartbreaking.
The church was very important to us. All the records in that church burned. Those were the funeral records, baptism records, marriage, confirmation records, and also our memories. We baptized our children in that church, and there was supposed to be a wedding in that church on the 24th.
Mamakwa says the facility wasn't insured, as it was completely built by community members at no cost. They had also recently purchased new pews for the church. Mamakwa notes they haven't decided on what their next steps are just yet, but they do want to rebuild the church in the future.
I'm hoping it happens fast somehow.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard. My friend is asking for donations so she can pick up gowns, fabric, candles, and everything. Most of the stuff that the church used. And I hope she gets some from the community at least.
A second blaze happened in the community around the same time, involving a trailer containing housing supplies. A 21-year-old from Attawapiskat was arrested and charged with arson for that incident. NAPS investigators are treating both fires as separate cases, but are investigating if they're connected. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Meanwhile, in Attawapiskat, OPP are investigating a suspicious fire that destroyed a home there on Wednesday. At around 8:30 p.m., OPP officers from the Attawapiskat detachment responded to the Star Street area of town to find the structure fully engulfed in flames. The fire completely destroyed the residence and damaged both adjacent buildings. Anyone with information on the suspicious blaze can contact OPP or Crime Stoppers. Parole for Lindsay Coyle, the Fort Frances nurse, was before the parole board this week and will be released next month. She was sentenced in January to 2 years in prison for the 2015 death of her patient, Hermina Fletcher. The Fort Francis Times reports that Coyle will be released on parole this September, less than 9 months into her sentence. She will be allowed to serve the remaining time in her home in Fort Francis with conditions. Coyle pled guilty to criminal negligence causing death. She altered records to increase Fletcher's morphine dose from 5 milligrams to 10 in order to steal the excess medication, according to an agreed statement of facts. But Coyle didn't change the records back, and the 76-year-old Fletcher died after receiving a double dose. A Fort Francis man has been ordered to pay out maximum damages to Borderland Pride for social media comments made earlier this year. The Ontario Small Claims Court recently ordered Luke Costin to pay out $35,000 in damages plus cost. That was for comments made on social media advertising a joint event with the Fort Francis Lakers in March. The court found the comments to be defamatory and hateful, referring to the plaintiffs as pedophiles and predators. The plaintiffs included Borderland Pride, its co-chair, local lawyers Douglas Judson and Peter Howie. $35,000 is the highest amount that can be awarded in small claims court.
We need to push back on this type of attack with force, and we need to impose consequences. And so, as a lawyer who does this work, that means that I'm going to start taking people's houses and their vehicles and their toys and draining their bank accounts and garnishing their wages, because no one is going to stop behaving this way until there are real consequences, until there's real financial pain that attaches to it. So we're going to keep doing that. And, hopefully the message will eventually get through that you have free expression, but that doesn't mean freedom from consequences.
Judson says he's seen an increase in hate speech against the 2S LGBTQIA+ community in the region and elsewhere. Judson's concerned that homophobic rhetoric online will inspire real-world violence targeting Pride events like the Lakers' Night Out. Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford made a major funding announcement for a clinic in Ignace this week. We'll have the details in just a few minutes. The Mary Bergland Clinic in Ignace will be expanding its pediatric care services. That's thanks to more than $500,000 in annualized base funding from the province, announced this week. Justin Hardy has more.
Kenora MPP Greg Rickford was in Ignace this week to announce the new funding, which will support programs and services that the province says demonstrate innovative approaches in pediatric care at Mary Bergland Community Health Center. The extra $537,000 a year will be used to vastly expand the clinic's pediatric services, according to Heidi West, executive director of the health center. She adds that the support of the province has been a great help in bringing pediatric services to the area.
It's allowed us to create this beautiful room that we're in today. We've created partnerships with Dryden Regional Hospital and the physician group of obstetrics and gynecology, and we're very excited to be able to now have gynecologists, obstetrics here on site. We're working towards bringing pediatricians, clinical psychology, and a lot of exciting specialties and programs in general to the community here.
This funding is part of the province's investment of an additional $330 million each year in pediatric health services across Ontario. Rickford says that one of the outcomes the province is hoping for is to attract more service providers.
So between Kenora and Ignace, you'll see over the coming months that there'll be a particularly strong commitment to pediatric services. And once that's demonstrated, sure enough, you get pediatric specialists wanting to serve and prospectively work in the area. So it's a recruitment tool, but most importantly, it offers the good folks of Ignace the services that they deserve.
In addition to the expanded services, the funding allows the health center to offer services 7 days a week by having physicians on call Saturdays and Sundays. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Uppsala is also receiving some provincial support. $180,000 in funding was announced during a visit on Thursday from Thunder Bay Attawapiskat MPP Kevin Holland. Holden Dougal was there and files this report.
An important boost for the community of Uppsala. Thunder Bay Attawapiskat MPP Kevin Holland was there announcing some funding. Local Services Board is getting $180,000 from the Northern Ontario Heritage Funds for 3 projects, including renovations at the recreational center.
Facilities like this, they're vital to smaller communities. To be able to have facilities like this to provide a gathering place for the residents to come together is, they become the heart of the community.
The renovations include refurbishing the washrooms and a new, more accessible entrance and foyer. Project manager Jenny Veal expects the work to be done by the fall of 2025.
It's the hub of everything. So it's where I've met all of my neighbors and my friends. I've had dances and laughs and celebrations of life. It kind of covers all the gambits. And it's also our curling rink. We have a fitness facility here.
Construction is already underway on a new storage facility for community resources like maintenance equipment. The rec center and the volunteer fire department are also getting new generators to keep the power running in case of emergencies.
And that's going to just ensure that the power's on so that we can meet the needs of the community if there is a case of emergency. The other day we had a false alarm for a forest fire in the area in which I live, and the fire department was there like that. And I thought, that is an impact directly on me and my neighbors. And the community center is often used as a community hub during emergencies, such as highways being closed for many hours, etc.
Here in Uppsala, Veal says the renovations will really help strengthen the community. Holden Dougal, TBT News.
Looks like a lot of strengthening there. And the success of a small-town refugee settlement program in the region is being recognized by the federal government. Attawapiskan's Ukrainian Refugee Support Project is addressing the humanitarian crisis caused by the ongoing Russian war on Ukraine. Lee Noonan has more.
As more and more people fled the war in Ukraine, the Attawapiskan Economic Development Corporation partnered with Resolute Forest Products to help bring refugees to Attawapiskan. Their Ukrainian refugee support program is now being featured by FedNor as a success story, and in June earned its 2024 Community Futures Award of Excellence for Community Economic Development.
The recognition's nice, but it's really coincidental to the whole project. What's important is that we've been able to resolve a number of problems together.
The program helped Resolute address a workforce shortage and connected refugees with jobs at the mill and with housing. Some live just outside town at the Quetico Center and many in town at the Attawapiskan Hotel, which had been sitting vacant for years until the AEDC and local volunteers quickly mobilized to get it up and running as a home for refugees.
Through the program, in total, there's probably close to 100. There's still in the neighborhood of 80 Ukrainians living in Attawapiskat. We've had about 40 through the hotel.
McKinnon estimates that Ukrainian refugees might now make up as much as 5% of the town's population. The 2021 census showed less than 2,000 people living here.
The success of this project here can be multiplied in the whole country, and it's not only about Ukrainian, it's about different people. It can be people from everywhere when they're coming.
Alex Bacall came to Canada through the program, working at the mill and living at the hotel at first. He's now putting his economics background to use working for the AEDC, and since his family joined him in Canada a year ago, has moved into a house in Attawapiskat.
There can be a lot of opportunity around, but the communications, I think, is the key, because different parts, moving parts, can have some opportunity, can have some demand, and when we sit at the one table and we speak honest and directly with each other, we can find a common ground.
Bacall hopes other places will take a close look at the program and draw some lessons from the success in Attawapiskat.
One job in Attawapiskat is the equivalent of about 1,350 jobs in Toronto. So if you multiply the numbers, the impact is huge. It's been great for the economy, but it's also been good for the community.
That's all for this edition of Northwest News Week. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the Northwest.